We got
Oh,
we
yeah.
got
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Yeah.
real issues, real issues. Yes. Just got that flash. All right. So great evening, great evening. I am the dynamic, daring, one of a kind diva Denise Silas. Excited to have you on tonight's Empowered by DS experience. Please put it in the chat if this is your first time tuning in with us. I am going to share before we get to hear from our dynamic speaker and learn about the topic that you came here to hear about. I am going to share with you just a little bit about Empowered by DS so that you know who we are, what we're about. Um, and this is when you hope that everything happened like it's supposed to. Yay! Um, I promise you, you guys, if this is your first time, I'm just here trying to give y'all some information. If you walk off here, it's like, oh, she. Hopefully, you say that I'm a little bit professional. It's not a very fancy podcast, but we just here trying to get our info. So I am right now your tech girl. I'm your interview, podcast, whatever. I'm all the things on tonight. But I promise you it's gonna be worth it. I promise you. So let's get talking here. So who is Empowered by DS? So the DS is for Denise Silas. That is me. Those are my two amazing daughters. So we do it as a trio. They stand behind me, help me, keep me in line regarding our mission. And our mission is to empower women to be the best version of themselves in the current season of their life. So we do that mainly through experiences. So we host at the beginning of the year, some of our local events is we host a vision board party. And the whole purpose of that is help women to reclaim what's important to them to get it in focus. Because how many of you would agree that we'll get so focused on taking care of everybody else, we lose sight of ourselves. So we do that at the beginning of the year. We also do other empowerment workshops throughout the year to keep women focused on their personal growth, their personal development. And then at the very end of the year, we do what's called a Vision to Victory party. So we can help you celebrate however you want to be celebrated, what you have accomplished for the year. Then that's more on your professional and personal development. Then we do what's called Diva Knitter and Dialogue. What that is through conversation, we are creating community and connections. And we just do a variety of topics and have conversation about it to hope that women will realize that they are more alike than they are different. Also, we do different activities because sometimes as an adult, we don't get to hang out and do the fun things like the younger people get to do. So we've had painting parties, we've done boots on the ground dancing, we've had a Valentine's Day event. So it's just really to help women to have their social self-care through connection and community. Then this is welcome to September, which is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. So I do an event every year in memory of my sister, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. And then we have what's called Escape to Empower Me. So I do a retreat, and we did a 1 day excursion away because how many of you know sometimes it's hard for us to get away for multiple days, but if we can just have a few minutes away to reset and come back, we are kind of restored and ready to operate. So we did our very first one this past April, and we had an amazing time. So if you attended our retreat day away, we did a retreat, you guys, on the bus. By the time we got to Nashville, we had relaxed, we had reset, we had did all kinds of things in them 3 hours. So if you was on that retreat, please put it in the chat so that they know how much of a great time that you have. So these are some of the other things we do. So everything we do, you guys, is around empowering women to be the best version of themselves. So every year we do a devotional. Last year we did 100 Days of Believing Bigger. Did that throughout the year. And right now we're working through the 21 Laws of Leadership. And just learning how, from a biblical standpoint, of how we can show up as leaders and be the best that we can. First of all, leading ourselves and then the people around us that we are able to impact. Right now, wait, hold up. I won't talk about that. But we have a subscription box. I'll talk about that in the future slides. But we also, in a couple of months, the way that we give back, one of our signature what do you call it? I guess giving back, but it's a different word I'm looking for. I can't think of what it is, but it's called the adopted grandparent. So through partnerships with individuals in the community, we're able to support Sacred Heart Southern Missions and be able to give 400 gifts to low-income individuals and throughout the northern Mississippi county. So that'll be coming up real soon. We kick that off in October so that they can have the gifts to the individuals at the beginning of December when they start doing their project. If you are not a part of our Decide Tribe community on Facebook, please join our community. I also do group training, one-on-one coaching. So if you are in a season where you need some accountability, check out our CPR coaching that I do as well. So those are some of the things that I do. And then I am a curator of experiences. So did it change? No, I'm looking. Okay, there you go. I was like, I'm looking at one thing and looking at another thing. So in addition to the professional development, I also, and that's a deep dinner and dialogue, is a social self-care. I am big about fun. So I work hard to play hard. So this is the fourth cruise that I have curated for my friends and family. So if you want to go do a cruise and you don't have nobody to go hang out with, or you want to look for some new family, because by the time we end it, we are all like a family. So you can text travel. So the number you got to text from is the number where I do a lot of it. It's like my communication system. So if you text back the word travel, you can get the information about that. If you text back the letters D, D, and D, you can get the information about our Diva Dinner and Dialogue. So it gives you what you need to know to help get connected with us. But I believe it's important that when we work hard, we definitely need to play hard as well. So through Empowered by DS, we got you on your faith. We're helping you build relationships with your family and your friends. We look at professional development. So we're working on your finances and your career. We also big on health and fitness. So we with you on that. And then finally, your fun. So the well-rounded woman is what we're trying to help you to build. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. My sister passed away in 2011 to ovarian cancer. So that has been something that's very passionate for me. I also lost my mom to cancer, but to lung cancer. I choose to focus on ovarian cancer because that's that sneaky cancer. Like it's one of those where we're experiencing bloating, we're experiencing using the bathroom regularly, like different things that's just normal that we would ignore, that a lot of the times women don't catch it early enough. So we have really stood up for the ovarian cancer because of that reason. So you can text Teal back to that number and it'll give you different ways that you can join the fight to help us raise money. We have raised over $10,000 through in her memory with the ovarian cancer. And then if you're local to us, we have an event that we're going to host at the end of the month as well. So check us out there. And our subscription box, there you go. So we have been blessed to create a subscription box. The whole thing is to bring some empowerment to the hands of women all across the country. We have people who subscribe all over. So, which is different than us being able to just connect with people locally. So in our subscription box, the whole purpose of it is keep you focused on what's important to you. So it has a customized journal in it. Then it also has some other things that help to just gives us, it's always going to have a t-shirt, a customized journal, and some type of drinkware and some other fun gifts in it as well. So you can use it, do a one-time subscription, or you can do a continuous subscription and just get your box every 4 months. And this serves also as a great gift, somebody that may need some loving. So check us out there. So all the things that we do. Oh, my bad. One more thing. And there it goes. So throughout this month, of course, you're going to hear about Dr. Allison today. Idra is a master herbalist. So she's going to talk about just from some things you can do to take care of yourself to kind of help us while we're taking medication to go alongside of that. So her topic is after the diagnosis, but even if you haven't been diagnosed for cancer, she's going to give you some good things just from a different perspective from a herbalist. So I'm excited about that. On the 16th, we'll have our panel. And then at the end of the month, Katrina is going to come. She's a wellness advocate, so she's going to talk about brain health for us as well. So every Tuesday, you're in our network, you'll get a text to just kind of say, here's the topic. You guys, if the topic is not for you, just say, okay, that's not for me. If you know of somebody who can benefit from the topic, share it with them. We do record them, so you can always share the recordings with them on our YouTube channel. So we have an Empowered by DS YouTube channel. So check out our website. We don't put them on the website, but it's on our YouTube channel. So check out our recordings there. Follow us on all platforms at Empowered by DS as well. So it should be coming right now. Join our Decide Tribe as well, our Facebook group community. Find us on our platforms and make sure that you are connected with us. We would love to connect with you. And then share the information, you guys. If you see something out, the way that you can support us and help us is just share with your community of people. We never know who may need the information that we have and the topics that we have. So we are excited, and there she is. We are excited to have Dr. Allison with us on today. I'm going to read you. Oh, I got to make you a co-thingy thing too. So let me stop share. I'm going to read you her bio. I'm going to give her co-hosting things. Welcome, everybody. If you have not put in the chat, oops, that's not what I meant to do. If you have not put in the chat where you are tuning in from, if this is your first time, please do. Let me find you. There you go. It goes. Confirm. Spotlight as well. Okay, so I'm gonna read your bio, and then I have a question for you before you start talking. Okay. So here we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. Dr. Allison Oliver is a special education educator with over 20 years of experience serving in a variety of roles within the field. A proud native of DeSoto County, Mississippi, she is deeply committed to advocating for individuals with disabilities and marginalized populations with a passion for advancing equity in education. She currently serves on the Teacher Education Division Board of the Council for Exceptional Children and as president-elect for the Tennessee Council for Exceptional Children. Dr. Oliver is the founder of Lessons Beyond the Eligibility, a consulting business that provides coaching, training, and advocacy support to school districts, parents, and educators. She is also a textbook author on practical behavior management strategies and regularly contributes to the field through research, presentations, and service. Beyond her professional work, Dr. Oliver is a proud mother of two, an active member of her church, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and the NAACP. She enjoys podcasting and content creation, traveling, and spending time with her loved ones, which she considers her greatest joy. So, before we get started, my first question to you, then I'll let you take it away.
Okay.
When did you first become, or what, two questions. When did you first become passionate about the field, and what triggered you to become more passionate about the field?
Well, it dates back to probably high school. My oldest sibling had a daughter that was born typical, and we say typical. She was born like any other child. And when she went to get her 4-month immunizations, she started having seizures that night. So that was all new. That was in 1999, to give you a reference. She's 25 now. So that was kind of the start of it. I come from a maternal grandmother that was an educator and social worker. So I know I didn't want to be an educator. I was like, they don't make money. I didn't want to do that. I went to school to be a nurse, and I did a semester of it, and I was like, I didn't like this. This is not for me. So life happened, and I became pregnant with my daughter, who is now 21. And I started working in the school system, the local school system, as a paraprofessional. And I was a fourth grade teacher assistant in a special education classroom. I loved it from day one. It kind of fell in my lap. So I did the alternative route and went through University of Mississippi's Teach Mississippi Institute, and I've been there in the field ever since. I saw a need for Black and Brown children in the schools, and just children that were not typical, that really weren't quite receiving what they needed, and parents and stakeholders really not knowing how to trust school systems and trust the special education process. And that's kind of how I landed there. It wasn't a real warm and fuzzy story. It was really me getting angry about things and how they were and wanting to be a change maker in it.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Well, hey, sometimes we think we want to do something and God where else, right?
Took me
So,
away.
so wonderful. So go ahead, take it away.
All right, guys, welcome. I am Dr. Allison Oliver. People that know me, I go affectionately by Dr. O. My students call me that. Tonight, I'm going to, of course, I have a presentation, and I'm not giving a lecture. It's 10 slides, and one of those slides is my contact information. So I want it to be engaging, and I want you to ask questions. So Denise, I don't know if I need to pause behind each slide or what for that, but I want them, if it's something so they can remember, this is very informal. I want you to talk back to me. So
I'll
I'm
keep, and
go
I'll
ahead.
keep an eye on the chat. So then if anybody, as you move forward, I'll just gradually kind of interrupt you.
Awesome. So, in order to understand special education, you have to understand the tiered process. So, if you've ever had a child that may have struggled with something, the formal name in the school system is called multi-tiered systems of supports. It's called MTSS. It's all these different tiers, typically 3 tiers. So, just to give you a little story time, tier 1, every student comes in getting typical instruction. That's tier 1. All teachers provide that. That's where all students receive. Tier 2 is when a teacher or yourself has identified that there's a struggling area. Most students in school have been at some point in the tier 2 process. That's nothing to be alarmed by. The goal is to slide back to tier 1 after you have received intervention. Tier 2 is typically where, sometimes you don't even have to be pulled out of the classroom. If you can remember back, I'm kind of old, so if you can remember the horseshoe tables where you may get pulled to understand a skill that you didn't quite grasp, that's tier 2. Now, because of all of litigations, you will get letters home that may say, hey, I want to enroll your student in tier 2. That is not special education. That is not receiving a lot of support outside of the classroom. That is targeted intervention support. For example, if your student struggles with math or reading or even behavior. Tier 3 is where there should be an area of concern. That means that the level of deficit is so significant that we need to provide intensive interventions in the school system. Look at that triangle, because I want people to understand it's not just for academics. Some of my most high performing, academically smart students, when I was in the K-12 setting, they had behavioral issues that qualified for them for special education. They would be in that tier 3, as you see on the screen, those intense interventions where they're getting pulled out to a separate location to receive support for either academics, behavior, social emotional learning, sometimes attendance wrapped in that, but it could be one or a myriad of the 4 that I mentioned on the screen. But that is when there are red flags. We see, okay, without this intensive intervention that's typically 4 to 5 times a week, they're getting pulled for 30 minutes minimum. Typically, it's 60 to 75 minutes maximum by a specialized interventionist to work on this skill set or this deficit. If it's for behavior, it's for behavior. If your student has behavior and academics, it's for both. You may see the school counselor doing it. You do have to sign for your student. There has to be some letter, some kind of communication that comes home from the school system saying that your child meets the criteria. I know the buzzwords the last decade has been the third grade gateway test. Tennessee just adopted it a couple of years ago. Mississippi has had it quite a while now. And you see a lot of students that did not pass that third grade reading gateway test. They automatically go into that tier 3 intervention because that is a cause for alarm. If by third grade you cannot reach those at the end of that third grade year, those standards, because again, the more policy we know, the jail sizes and the prison sizes are based on third grade literacy rates. So that's a little policy information for you when you go to think about these things. So the goal in tier support is to slide between the continuums, but we don't live in a perfect world. There will be students that do not excel or progress in tier 3. That is when the school system, after collecting a series of data, I will be honest with you and put Dr. O's hat aside, speaking to this population that's on here. Best practice, do not sign for an evaluation under 9 weeks of intervention, because intervention has the tendency sometimes to not be data collected with fidelity. And you want to have enough data points, and you keeping up with those data points, which I'll talk about later in the slides deck, that you have enough support to say, I recognize I have identified a pattern as well from what the data is bringing home with being sent home, that I feel there is also a need to move into that comprehensive evaluation. You do legally have to sign for your child to be assessed and comprehensively evaluated. They have, from the date that you put your name on that document, they have 60 calendar days, not 60 just random days, 60 calendar days, and day 1 starts the day after you sign. This process ensures early intervention and support before formal evaluation. Some parents may be on here, or teachers or stakeholders on here, that your student has been in tier 3 for years. That is problematic if we're not showing progress. Now, if you are in tier 3 and you see progress, or have you ever noticed students that are just getting by the skin of their teeth? That is a problem where I would recommend you requesting special education comprehensive evaluation. Special education has a stigma. We all know it. It is not a destination. We don't want to just place students to be there forever. Now, of course, students will have disabilities. Individuals will have disabilities that they require that support until exiting high school. And notice I said exiting and not graduating, because everybody will not graduate with a diploma. And we'll talk about that later. It is a service, though, and if you use it early and appropriately, your student has a chance of getting a diploma or getting enough independent skills that they can progress in this world a little more independently without the services. Now, circling back, if you chose not to do the tier 3 interventions and proceed with a comprehensive evaluation, your step will look a little different. Your student will stay in that tier 3 without protections. I always say it's best to have protections than not, because these protections last when you need ACT testing accommodations, when you need accommodations for state requirements for a general diploma. There's some comfort in having some protections, but you don't want to have that protection as a hindrance, because we want students to be there that need a service, not just lingering because they get comfortable and acquainted with it. What is the nature of it? Guys, it's simply specially designed instruction to meet the unique needs of children with disabilities or diverse needs. It ensures access to the general education curriculum. You may say, but there are classrooms that are full of students with disabilities and they don't have exposure to general ed curriculum. Well, legally, they have to have some exposure, even students that are in those classrooms that are medically fragile. We have to evaluate annually, has any progress happened where we can move them into even activity periods, or up north, I know they call them specials, but nationally we have to assess on a continuum to see if the rate of progress is happening, to see if they can have more or less access to general ed curriculum. Special education, ultimately, when it's done correctly, and I'll put that caveat because I'm sure there'll be questions at the end, it's focused on growth, independence, and inclusion. I'm happy to say Our local, I know there are people from all over on here, our local school district with the good settings, we try to get parents to understand your student can test out of special education. And oftentimes I talk to friends, family, church members, guys, it's okay if little Johnny had a deficit in third grade, but we're now in seventh grade and he's being dependent on these services, but don't need those services. You need to get into the comfort of utilizing special education when your student is eligible for service and not just to stick around to get certain accommodations that they may not need. The goal is to support these students so they can reach their full potential. This is one of the most important things I'll say tonight. Know your rights. These items on the screen, these are key laws surrounding special education. IDEA, you probably heard that in the news, budding with the new administration because funds have been drastically cut, meaning that some of these services, even the tier support services, have been reduced nationally due to funding. So when you reduce tier services that I talked about on the first slide, that's more chances of students getting into special education because you don't have any interventions. Aligned. You don't have any interventionists, and they have to have salaries, and they're certified teachers. So it's a domino effect. If you reduce over here, you increase over there. FAPE, if something was to happen today in your city or your county and schools were to just diminish or demolish, like in Sky Full of Elephants or something, free and appropriate public education, students with disabilities will always be educated. They will always have education services provided to them, until the age of 21, until they age out. Some states, it's till they finish that consecutive year. FAPE provides protections, meaning that if something was to happen to me, if I receive special education services, the school district has to come to my house. They have to make by any means necessary provide services. If I were to get involved into criminal activities and I have a disability, they have to go to the prisons, the jails to provide specialized instruction, just so you can know how important the law around FAPE is. Least restrictive environment. A lot of parents, and I am known across the district for sliding sticky notes or texting people to understand what a least restrictive environment means. That's the time spent in general education environment. You will always hear in an IEP meeting, well, the LRE is 89% or 79%, 30%. And people will be like, well, why are they not in the general ed population? You just signed an IEP with a 33% LRE. That means that's farthest away from the general ed population. They're in that classroom with typical peers only 33% of the day. So that's an important law to understand. Procedural safeguards, that's a book, and I actually printed one so you guys can just reference. It's a little thicker than this. It's a great big stack of papers, and they have digitized copies now. But so many parents, even if your student is not in special education, I advise people to take a breeze over it because you never know what deficit may come up in your student, but the procedural safeguards are all of your rights. It tells you what you can do, how you can request appeals, what your student is sanctioned to have if they receive services, if they become eligible. Parent participation is a protected right. I say that with a caveat. If a school district has reached out to you several times, if a student is suspected to have an obvious disability, a little story, I had a student that came from down the Delta way. I was in North Mississippi. I was in DeSoto County School District. The student came to this district. She was blind. Her mom was a little intellectually disabled as well. And the mom stated that she had never been in special education, but she couldn't see and had a lot of deficits, to say the least. Well, the mom was intellectually disabled. We had to go through certain services to make sure the mom understood what she was signing, to make sure that the student had services because she didn't understand the rights. After 3 attempts, the school district can legally move forward with policies, but you have a right to, if when you understand it or if you have a spokesperson, they can extinguish those rights. So I want you to know your procedural safeguards is in a sense like your Bible for special education. I think it protects the teachers, the administrators, the school district, the whoever's working with that student. It shows all the rights. And it's an emphasis on collaboration between school and family. Any questions so far? I see chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before you go forward, the question was testing out of special ed. Is that an actual test that students take, or is that when they meet all the goals on their IEP and the team determines she no longer needs support services?
Great question. So I hate to say when they say they meet all the goals on their IEP, because for one, the IEP is developed annually every year. And sometimes, depending on the school district, it's every academic year, or sometimes it rollovers in calendar year. Just depends on the school district and when the student became eligible. I do not agree and legally with just because they met goals, because goals are typically subjective and they're put on there for what are our focus goals. For example, if I have a lot of deficits, I can't put all of my deficits on there at once, right, with an IEP. So we pick and choose those that we call our buildable deficits. Like if I can't read, for example, my focus is going to be on reading comprehension, being able to orally read and understand before I move on to theme analysis and things like that, breaking down that goal. So I always say a comprehensive data review and another comprehensive evaluation, because we all know, if you've ever experienced having to sit in an IEP meeting, those goals sometimes are geared towards passing state tests from year to year, not necessarily what you or your child deems important to understand. I know the school system, they have to get markers to grow their district, to grow things. Well, a lot of times those goals are not in alignment with what I would think I want my student to need to grow up to be an independent individual. So requesting a comprehensive evaluation. I will say states up north do a better job because they have different resources available at state and district level. It's all about how your mayors, your policyholders, your senators, how they allocate funds to schools. We have a shortage in the South. Typically, when I say the South, all the Southern region, research has been done for over 30 years on that there's a stark difference in some of the school systems as far as comprehensive evaluations. Best practice in a perfect world, we would like to get that done annually, but by law, they only have to do it every 3 years. And if you've ever been in the school system, when I say they do it every 3 years, they call it a reevaluation. It's a lot of check boxes. It's not necessarily a full comprehensive evaluation. I recommend parents asking before you test out, or when they're at that table talking about Allison has met all of her goals over a course of term, ask for a comprehensive evaluation. They can still decline it, but ask and have your reasoning behind. That's a part of the advocacy that I will talk about further in the slide deck. But that's a great question. I would never just sign off that my child can be removed from receiving these level of services based off one IEP and goals being mastered for one academic year. Because if the markers were significant enough when a psychologist or a psychometrist evaluated them for them to meet the criteria, you can't, I'm trying to say this ethically, you cannot grow the disability away. We develop coping strategies and interventions to learn how to navigate the disability. So if I was born with ADHD, there's no pill, there's no praying, there's no teacher that can get that out of me. That's a medically complex deficit in my brain that I have to work and learn coping strategies with it. And a lot of times when we see students that outgrow it, they've learned, they've matured, they've learned coping strategies to navigate it, and they know how to access resources. And that's a lot of the advocacy part. I always say the younger they are, go full throttle when you find out there's a deficit, because the earlier you intervene, the better off your student will be in the end. It doesn't fix everybody. I will tell you, everybody will not test out, but the more support and data-driven support and intervention you give, the better your student will be. I hope I answered your question. Was there another one?
I don't see it. I didn't see another one. Did somebody have their hand raised? I thought you said you saw somebody hand raised.
No, I just saw two on the chat, so it may be something I'm missing. So who qualifies for special education? I won't read that, guys, to you all because you can see it, but there are 13 categories listed on the screen that if the student meets the marker, or there's a statistical significance when they evaluate them. That means that they are above the bell curve in an area, or their numbers rate off the charts in a continuum. That means that they are eligible. Again, your student may rate off the chart, but you do have the right as a parent, and a lot of people don't understand that you don't have to sign into special education. I will say that it will make your student's life a little more difficult if you see that there's a large margin and the comprehensive evaluation has identified data. You have the right to not respond to that and to decline services, but also people have their reasoning when declining services due to disproportionality, due to the data being presented not with fidelity. So you do have that right as a parent. I don't want anyone to think you have to be bullied into special education, because that's not the goal. The IEP, that's what everybody, that's the thorn in the rose. But guys, it's really the blueprint of how the school should support your student. So these are just some, and this is really could be its own presentation, but these are the items that are included and have to be included in the IEP, the individualized education program, the present levels of performance. I always say it's tough sometimes. It's heavy to sit in an IEP meeting when you have to hear about the grows and the glows. And I always frame it like that when I'm supporting parents and writing IEPs in my past, because when you think about a seed can grow. These are areas that my intervention, this IEP is going to be the seed to help them grow. We talk about what they're weak in, what the deficit is in. And then we talk about the glows. What does Allison do well already, and how can we build upon that? That's what a good IEP should read like. It should not be, I've advocated for parents in IEP meetings that the IEP is nothing but negative information, and that's not. Everybody has something good and has a strength point. So I want you to know that. Measurable annual goals. You have annual goals. Those are the goals that have been identified from the comprehensive evaluation and a series of data collected that probably led to the evaluation. And then you have what they call short-term objectives. Those are those chunks of goals that you're going to work on throughout the 9 weeks or whatever the term. Services and accommodations, I'll talk about that on another slide. And progress monitoring plan. This is something that I do not see parents advocate enough for, and that I try to tell people IEPs are wonderful. It's great to get an IEP, but stay on them about progress monitoring. I recommend data being sent home no less than biweekly, just so you can keep up. I would hate as a parent, especially if a parent with a student with a disability or has a unique need that requires services, that I'm not understanding the rate of growth, or I have to wait 9 to 10 weeks to see if we're making any growth, because we don't want to assume that I can't give external services, because students with disabilities can have tutors, they can have external support, and work with some of the resources that I'll provide at the end of the presentation. This last bullet, guys, you are so essential with the IEP team, but I also want you to know diplomas are possible pending the need. Time is of the essence. If you wait to care when your student gets in 10th grade, it's too late. You cannot retrack 10 or 11 years of deficit. It always baffles me. I see a few educators on here. It baffles me when I used to receive 8th and 9th graders that could not read sight words, but they're in general ed classrooms, and parents literally would try to sue a school district or try to say they didn't know their student couldn't read. It is your responsibility too, as well as the school district, to identify needs. So again, early and appropriately getting that footwork done, so that if your student does end up at this table, it's not a death sentence to them. They can grow from it. Supports and services, what you may see if your student or someone you know that you can share, what supports and services look like. So I put some instructional supports. Those are settings that students that have disabilities may have their instruction provided in. Those areas, like a resource room, that typically students that go to resource rooms, they receive that specialized instruction in those core subjects like language arts, English and reading, and then math. Those are those typically. And if they're in a state tested subject area like science, they would go there for that. Co-teaching model is exactly what it sounds like too. credentialed educators teaching in the same space. Inclusion, that's a buzzword that is not always done correctly. That means that Allison has a disability. She's in a typical setting with typical peers. But in the true version of inclusion is that Allison should be included and not just set in the room. So make sure if your student has inclusion on their IEP, that they are actually being provided services in that classroom, that they are indeed included and not just a body sitting in the space and still feeling excluded. Community-based, those are those classrooms that medically fragile students that have high behavioral needs or low cognitive abilities, they are in those classrooms with a team of support. And homebound is exactly what it is. They receive their services in a homebound location or a medical hospital. Sometimes, if you've ever heard of our school in the local school district, a place called Magnolia, that's for behavioral. Those students are over there, and that's considered like a homebound type situation nationally. Related services, speech, occupational, physical, those are what they need. Two buzzwords, accommodations and modifications. I highlighted what you need to take from those. When anytime, even if your student is not in special education, you want to have as many accommodations and as least amount of modifications. Accommodations are just providing, think about differentiated instruction. It's providing different modalities to learn, but you're learning the same content. The expectation remains the same as typical peers. When you start modifying work, that is the farthest away you get from a diploma. And I tell people, so if your little Johnny is in 7th grade and we're modifying work, we're reducing assignments, we are expecting them to do the bare minimum. That's the farther away that they are from a typical general ed diploma. And unfortunately, we live in a state that we don't have occupational diplomas anymore. You have a certificate of completion or a diploma. Again, who you vote for matters. And I'm going to leave it at that. Parents and stakeholders on how can you advocate? That's the big buzzword. You have to equip yourself and your student to advocate. And if you find that you can't, that's what people around like me are for. And I don't want you to think that you have to pay. There are local groups. There are local agencies within our state. You may be on a waiting list because it's free, but they do have people that are out here that are credentialed that will sit on your behalf. Fun fact, the state board will sit and advocate for you on your behalf, but you have to do the footwork and have your information appropriately. So at school, how can you advocate for your student? Attend those meetings and ask questions. I know we live in a virtual world, and because of the economy, everybody's not able to take off work. You have the right to postpone meetings and ask if you can go at a later date within guidelines, depending on like if it's an evaluation, because they have a calendar that they have to adhere to legally. But make sure, I always say, sometimes online there's a disconnect of information. There's nothing like seeing the data, feeling the data, reading the room, and listening to your child. Review progress reports regularly. I'm not talking about the progress reports that come home in 4.5 weeks if you're on a 9-week term. I'm talking about the progress reports that are in the IEP that shows how are we progressing towards this deficit. Because the general ed teacher is typically working on different skill sets, but you want to know what is the rate of progress on a deficit? Once you understand how and at what speed your child learns, that will help you have a realistic depiction of what you're working with and what the disability entails and what supports you need. Communicate with teachers and staff and demand data. Guys, that's my weak point either. We can't be scared to ask for things for our children. And I say that all the time because a teacher is not afraid to ask you for anything or let you know that there's a deficit. Ask for data, ask for work samples, ask for, make sure that you're asking your student when they come home, were you pulled today? Who pulled you? Start documenting, because we live in a world, we don't want to think that these credential educators lie, but they do. They do. Or we don't want to see that I always say, padding information. There's always truth embedded somewhere in there. For example, there may be a student receiving special education services for behavior, but very bright. They should not be denied AP classes because of their behavior. I have fought, I used to work with an administrator that we fought for my students with emotional behavior disorders, but his IQ was like out of this world to be in an AP class because we should not deny that intellectual property of that student. Seek external supports and evaluations. I know they're expensive, but with certain medical insurances, there's always wait lists around. That's just the nature of psychologists and psychometrists. They're backed up. Nationally, that's an issue. But guys, if you suspect something before school even identifies it, get your student tested external. I'm a special education teacher, and people, I see a couple on here that know how I roll. I even got, like, my son has ADHD. He had ADHD. He's 18 now and out of school. He had ADHD, and you're not going to just pass and push on when I'm sitting here reading with him every day and I'm noticing, like, you looking at what's going on. This when he was younger, like second grade, I did external testing. The school didn't have to come to me. He didn't have a disability, but it's nothing like, okay, it's first, second grade. I'm noticing that there's something different that with the learning, even though you're bright, your grades are there, but I can see problems down the road. Let me get ahead of this. There's nothing wrong with going to your pediatrician, going to a psychologist or a mental health provider to get a second set of eyes that have no biases, because sometimes educators, I'm sure they can have bias too. So looking beyond the school walls. I encourage you to participate in local networks. I always give Denise props for having conversations like this about a myriad of subjects, because you never know who else has walked this path or who has experience in this path or even just has someone to connect you with. A lot of my learning, yes, it's from books and reading and things, but there's nothing like lived experience, okay? So don't deny that of yourself. Educate yourself on policies and vote and use your voice. It's unfortunate, but across our county now, we have people that are against extra funding in schools, and they were voted in by high margins. So I want you to think about the local vote just as well as the presidential vote. I'm not bringing social action in here, but all of these domino effects. I don't think people understand that your local government controls your school funding and makes recommendations. Your mayor approves school board budgets. Do you see where I'm going? So if teachers, mental health providers, we're not having enough, or we only have one psychologist or psychometrist per 3 schools, guys, pay attention to who you vote for, because a lot of times they told you that money is going to be allocated somewhere else. And I always shake my head because now we have this new administration, right? And special education, mental health services, all of these things, medically fragile students have lost funding out of this world, but they didn't think it was going to hit that close. But that's their grandparents. That's their individuals with disabilities. Those are the students in the class that all of these, they're trying to push it back. So that's out. That second bullet is most important. Correct others in error. We don't say retarded around these parts. We don't say dumb. We don't say you're a SPED kid on the short bus. We don't do those things. Educate yourself on being ethical and just having empathy for others, because you never know what life will bring you. We're all one car accident away from having a traumatic brain injury or dealing with something or walking a path. And I hate for you to be someone of regrets. I used to work with a lady that I loved, but she did not love my students with disabilities at all. She was a phenomenal teacher, but guess what? She had a little boy that has dyslexia. So the tables turn, and you have to eat your words. So make sure you correct others in error. That's a part of advocacy. One of the largest portions that I see beyond the school walls with advocacy is preparing your children for self-advocacy. You won't always be there. Equip your children, sit down and talk to them. You have ADHD, you have an emotional behavior disorder, you have a reading deficit. You don't read as well as your peers. So if someone's giving you something to sign, if someone's saying something to you, ask for a moment to process, ask for someone to repeat that. I know adults right now that are highly educated, but they have disabilities that they've never addressed. So I don't want you to equate degrees and credentials to not having a disability, because sometimes we learn coping strategies to mask that. And sometimes you don't find out or deal with it until it's too late. So don't be that parent that's in denial because Johnny can play sports good or he can read wonderful, but can he regulate his emotions? Can he talk to peers? Can he explain and express himself? Lastly, lean on data with fidelity. If you're doing what I said over in the other column about school, that fidelity and that data, because let me tell you something about school districts. If they know that you are a phone call, email, presence away, they support your child like they're supposed to. And it should be like that for all students. One thing about it, you will never have to worry about, if I know you're a student, I'm going to advocate for you. Even legally, when I was working for the school district, I could not give parents certain tips in front of people, but I would get on their phone. You need to say this, ask this, and see what they say. Like, make sure guys share the wealth of knowledge. That's a big part of advocacy. Resources. I put a few just local, but I know we have people on here. But I also put, yeah.
Before you do any resources, I'm going to back up because you mentioned, and this is and I know this from kind of experience with my sister. I think I was telling you a little bit about my nephew. When people are struggling with owning the situation, they're more concerned about
Stigma.
yes, and all of that kind of stuff. The impact. I often wonder if she would have addressed it earlier, could his life been different? Just talk a little bit more about, we have to just identify it, and because it's going to help them more than hurt them.
Mm-hmm. That is that acceptance piece. And believe it or not, I always, when parents call me, I have someone that I'm working with now that's very close to me, that they are in denial. I will be honest with you. They are in denial about their child. And one thing I always say, seek mental health services for yourself to gather that acceptance, and get someone, when you can't sit there, get someone else to advocate for your student to accept that. But a lot of times we are afraid of what someone will say because our students are in special education, or we don't want them to be different. But when we deny those services, we make them more different because they don't get the help they need. So what has been successful for me, because everyone has their own, is when the parent works with their embarrassment about it. Because a lot of times kids, I mean, I used to have kids begging to come to my special education classroom because they didn't really realize what was going on, because I don't yell out, I'm SPED. They just knew me as Miss Oliver at the time, that, oh, it's fun, they get extra help in there. They really did not understand that that's a SPED room, they're being held. I always say, parents, reach out to your local support groups, talk about it, get mental health counseling for yourself, because it helps you process that. Why are you so embarrassed by it? Because it is. I will be honest, I'm an educator, and I was like, why does my kid have ADHD? And I know that ADHD is not something you can catch. It was like, it's something that you're born with. You don't develop ADHD. But it is difficult. I won't lie to you and say that if you've ever had a child with anything different, that it's hard to process sometimes, but it's even harder to process that you may have been the reason why they don't get a diploma if you don't act early and appropriately. So my best friend calls me very direct. I shoot it straight when I tell parents. I have empathy, but I also I'm a very narrative based professional. I provide stories. I talk about my lived experiences. And the more platforms we have, such as these, and just talking, the more you're around women, even with I remember coming to your dinner diva dialogue, one of them, you end up talking about things. Your children are going to come up, and you will be surprised how many families have gone through things similar, and those lived experiences really help. So talking to others and not hiding yourself from it, and getting the help you need to process it, because parenting is not for the weak. Accepting a disability is difficult. I will not sit here and not have empathy and say, because that's a lived experience that I've had with different people I've worked with. But the earlier, when you define it to them, the more you deny the extra help, the farther away they are from being their best versions of themselves. And a lot of times they get on board with it.
Okay. Just want to nudge that a little bit more in case we still have some folks who are doing it. So go ahead.
No, that's a big part of it. So the ARC of Northwest Mississippi, they're a great support. I always like her because, for one, she does not sell you a pony show. She tells you, like, she's really direct, but in a good way. She has lived experiences, the owner of it, and that the parents there, they can, again, that's just the conversation, and they have offerings sometimes that it's parents only, where there are parent workshops. They talk about legal rights, how you can be executor of your children's information and IEPs and stuff when they get of age where they can make decisions for themselves. I think it's very important to reach out to these, all of these on the screen are free groups that can help you with resources and external interventions and supports. On the national side, one that's my favorite, when I see that a school district is not doing what they need, or a parent is really not grasping what needs to be grasped, Olmstead Rights. It is a litigation group, and it's free, FREE. You can be anywhere in the United States, and they will fight on your behalf. A lot of times when a school district sees that you have pulled out an attorney, you do not have to be rich to have an attorney, because the State Department will serve as your voice as well. But having that extra voice that's non-biased, and you want someone in your corner advocating for you that won't sell you fake dreams. And when I say fake dreams, if your student is reading on a second grade level in 11th grade, they will not get a diploma. So we don't need to spend energies fighting for a diploma. We need to spend energies on how can we make sure that they can be employable. How do they want to live on their own? What resources can we connect them with to get an occupational route or a trade or something? Because you have a lot of students that, I mean, we've grown up with people, back in the day, that they may be can't read or illiterate, but they can hold jobs. Sephora, I don't know if you shop at Sephora, but I am a fan of Sephora because they hire individuals with disabilities that are on the cusp. But guys, they pay them a livable wage. I have seen some of our former students with intellectual disabilities that could not qualify for a diploma. Guys, they are managers. They make more money than some of us. So I want you to reach out and know your resources, and don't think of, if your child has a significant deficit, that it is a death sentence or that they cannot thrive. There are cases that, students, it's just the cards were dealt with, that there'll be students that are medically fragile, that have different situations that they will require wraparound services and care. But wherever your student, whatever level they are on, make sure you're not the hindrance, because there are tons of resources available pending. I will say Mississippi is not the state to live in Tennessee if you want a lot of services. I've known a lot of people to move to, like, Ohio, top notch in the country for disability services and supports. And I know everybody, that's not feasible to move, but when you have a short window of time of opportunity, you'll do whatever you have to for your child. Questions?
And the thing too is, you can still go to college. It's not like, one of my girlfriend's daughter is in college. She went away to school and still is able to grow at her pace, right? Growing at her pace, but she is in college now, and she has intellectual disabilities.
Absolutely. I work at Austin P as an assistant professor in Clarksville, Tennessee, and we have what is called full spectrum. We have over 40 students with autism and disabilities that are, some of them are getting associate degrees, some of them are getting bachelor's degrees, but there are supports out there. So I don't want you to think that special education is just a stopping point, that it will hinder. Of course, if they don't need it, we don't want it. But if you know that your student needs that support, and the data suggests that, the evaluation suggests that, lean into that and see where it'll take you.
Oh, okay. Before you do that, I had some questions. Okay, so you had said, monitor the progress. That was a big piece of it. What are some of the things, like, if they realize that, like, I guess they're just looking at the information, the data, as you're saying it, So if they notice there's no change, what should they do?
We go back to the drawing board. We call an IEP meeting. So when you, great question, Denise. So when you notice that the IEP data is coming home and it's looking stagnant, you notice we started school in August, we're at the same place in December. We need not, you can call an IEP meeting. You do not have to wait on the school to call a meeting. And you say, I want to revise the modality of this goal, or we need to see what's work, how are you intervening? Is not obviously working. What else can we do to revise this goal, to look at what is the hindrance of us progressing in this goal? Do not wait until May to talk about something that you saw for 6 months not moving. That's the key. Pay attention to that.
And oh, I was taking my own notes. So you have did that. Just make sure I got the ones. I was taking notes as you were going. What's okay? You keep saying this reference, and there may be people on here that know, but I'm not going to assume that they do. So you kept referencing comprehensive evaluation. Like there's different types of evaluations. So can you share a little bit more about that?
I personally feel in school districts, if somebody's on here, don't go back snitching on me, but I feel that school districts typically only test for what they assume or suspect a disability is, and a comprehensive evaluation test for everything. So you would like to know, I think it's important to know IQs. I think it's important to know, is there an audiology problem? To know if it's reading and math deficits, because sometimes we will think it's a math deficit, but we can't read and we've only tested in math. So I think a comprehensive research and best practice tells us that initial evaluation should be comprehensive and test for all subject areas and IQ. I will tell you, with the shortage of psychologists and psychometrists, most school districts nationally are only testing for suspected deficit areas, which is a disservice for the student, because we also know that most disabilities have a comorbid disability. Just like if I can't read, I'm probably going to have problems with word problems, which is another disability category, because I can't read. So if you're only testing for math calculations, math numerical things, it's not going to come up that I can't read. So a comprehensive evaluation really encompasses everything that I, as a parent, would want to see.
Cool. I hope that helps somebody. I was like, I think that was important. Okay. Does anybody, before she goes to stay connected, any questions? Any questions? Any questions? There's no question that is I should have known question, because she got the letters. We don't got the letters. She got the information. We don't, and the experience. Do you have any tips for anybody that once they get their child has I forgot how you said, they didn't get a diploma, they have
They're in the transitioning phase. So they got, if your student ends up where they get a certificate of completion, there are options. There are transition programs around. We have one of the best in North Mississippi, honestly. With that, Sephora is a big partner, but it's Mississippi Disability Services. But again, parents, you have to advocate for those, because typically, and I'll be very frank with you, if your student has a disability and gets a certificate of completion but has significant behavioral needs, that is where we struggle with transition planning, because they cannot regulate their emotions and a lot of companies will not take them. In this area, we do have quite a few partnerships that we're working with. We Project Search is another one, but again, that's an interview process. So when I told you earlier about, if you notice, and I'm just going to give a middle school, 7th grade, if you notice things don't look like they're progressing, looks like we may be stagnant. We've been in special education since 1st grade. This is just a scenario. And what I need to start at age 14, that's when legally the school has to start considering transition planning. Like what does the student want to do when they exit high school? That is when I would put a focus on self-regulation skills, a focus on these are some job opportunities that post high school exiting that may be available to you. Let's start doing practice with that. Guys, you know, you can do field trips to these employers, super low, all of these places. And that's something that as a county we have to do better with. There are a lot of businesses that hire individuals with disabilities with low IQs, but you have to go and talk to managers. You have, again, that networking piece will get you farther than any just sitting there stagnant and being in misery alone. But actually being frank with your student and your family, because it's usually a family decision. Especially males have harder tendencies accepting disabilities with their children, but having those conversations. Do you want to bag groceries? Do you want to live independently in a group home for individuals? I have a distant cousin that's in Detroit. He is, I think, 48 now. He was back then the term was mentally retarded, but now it's ID, intellectually disabled. He's kept a job. He lives in a group home, does well. He even drives. But he had that transition support even back then. So I would always advise you to, when you notice at 14, start talking first to your family and your student, but asking the teacher, hey, if we don't see much change, what are their options? Who can I connect with? Because there are organizations and networks that you can be placed with that can give you that support to help phase out where your student is not just sitting at home, because a lot of times that's where crime starts to happen and they start to get in trouble. Thank you for that question.
Sherry says, I've done some research in Mississippi and Tennessee areas, and yes, I agree, less resources and services. We have an adult son who has a disability. He is on a waiver now here in
Um,
Unfortunately, we have to move to Mississippi and Tennessee area. Is there something similar to the waiver in those areas? If so, will he have to apply and be on a waiting list, or will he be grandfathered in?
Unfortunately, we are in a red state. And a lot of times, that's a great question. We're not grandfathered in. I will tell a personal story. My niece that I spoke of earlier, my sister is her primary caregiver. She has not worked in, I think, 15 years. They're in a situation where it's okay, but there's no caregiver for my niece. And it's almost, if you're not poverty level, and she's 25, you don't receive the support. This is very frank what I'm going to say, so I want you to take it with a grain of salt. If I've seen students like you're speaking of in our state receive more support when they are barely living, like they have a lot of oxygen needs, they have unique situations, versus if your student like you're speaking, like my niece, she's nonverbal and we take care of her entire needs. She doesn't walk, talk, do anything. We feed her, but no services have been around. We've been in this area 25 years. The most services that we find, they want to place them in nursing home type facilities, or we don't, again, that's why I said more Westerner. Up north, you have more resources. It's just because who we're putting into office in this area, that's not a priority. There used to be about 10, 12 years ago, before the DAC moved to its new location, right there across from Sam's, that was an adult daycare facility. I don't know if you've noticed that funding is gone and that place is gone. And it was actually one of the few places that we had when students would exit out of high school and their parents did not have to be poverty level to receive support. And it was, I'll be frank with you, it was somewhere you would let your child, individual go because it was a nice facility. But there's nothing in the area. That's something we've been fighting for years. Tennessee has a few, but again, I'm very honest and transparent because I think of all the children like they're mine, regardless of age. Anybody, some of those facilities, even in the Memphis area, you wouldn't want your child in because they are not requiring credentialed people there to watch them and to support them. Because a lot of times you want a facility that has healthcare professionals, you want a facility that is governed around some disability rights. And unfortunately, right now, we just don't have that grandfather system. You typically, there's a Medicaid application that you can have fast tracked if you've already been approved in another state. But again, the biggest feat we have, a lot of these resources. They'll have you, someone coming in the home, one or two times. One of my church members, her son was in a very dire situation, and they only approve for 30 minutes a week. So it's the state and the area, because again, the people in policy, they approve these fundings and things. And I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's the truth. It's when we see things snatched away, it's a lot of times funding reallocated.
Thank you. Ooh. Yeah, definitely unfortunate. Definitely unfortunate. Um, any last questions or okay. Okay, well share with them how they can connect with you, ma'am.
Thank you. I hope it was not too heavy. I did not intend on it being heavy. I just like to be transparent. But I am on all social media streams. The QR code will take you to my website. If you ever find yourself needing support or just needing to vent, I'm available for that, because it can get heavy trying to connect with individuals. And I do have a really great network of people that have dealt with a lot of disabilities and can provide some lived experience and have connector of resources to you. So if you want to follow me, everything's on the screen. Those are the hashtags you can search, and you'll find tons of quirky videos of me talking about this stuff, because I live this stuff daily. But I thank you for logging on, and I hope it was something that you could take away to help yourself or someone that may be encountering these obstacles.
And I have also put in the chat. You guys, I've also put in the chat the website, because sometimes, if we're on our cell phone, we can't get the QR code. So this is her website as well. I also I try to within 48 hours have the replay also posted on our Empowered by DS YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and re-listen, you have that as a resource as well. And let's see, if you stop sharing for me,
okay. Thank you.
Allison. And then I just want to leave you guys with, let's see, sharing. No questions, tips. Delight. So one thing I want to leave you guys with is we are our sister's keeper. You guys, empowered women, empowered. So you come on, get the information. If you know of anybody, share. Let's not be keepers of information. You took the time to get on. Maybe somebody else didn't realize, or they, for whatever reason, lack of time, or even, I'm going to say shame, but don't want to connect themselves. Share the information. We are a community of women. Our whole mission is to empower each other, but no need to empower yourself if you can't empower another. So it's all about what we can do for each other. So share and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Join our Facebook group as well. And do know that we are here to support. So if there's any other topic that you would want to, you can always email that to empoweredbyds@gmail.com and share with us. We are definitely willing to get the information. So I do like Dr. Allison said, I do hope that this was valuable information, that you found it for something that if it's not just for yourself, for somebody that that can benefit from it, then maybe somebody in our family, but encourage people that that may have a situation or they're noticing something different. Encourage them to get their child help. I tell you, my sister, and we'll close after this. My sister, I had to end up having my sister's son when he was in high school. I got blindsided sitting in a meeting. They started talking all of this jargon that I had no idea what they were talking about. And then I believe part of his issue too, that because of the embarrassment, he was acting out. So you couldn't address his lack of not being able to read because of his behavior issues. So and the fact that I got him at 16 and had no clue that he couldn't read, no clue that this is his situation, I knew it was because she did not want to share for whatever reason. So encourage family members, because I do believe that had that been addressed earlier on, he could have had different options in how he progressed through life. And he's finally getting it together, but there's a lot of things that happened that had she been willing to get him the services that he needed, he could have had just a different pathway. So let's encourage our friends and family to, it's okay. It's okay. They're not alone. And what's best for the child is what's best for the child. So, all right, you guys, thank you for everybody for getting on. Appreciate your time. And thank you again, Dr. Allison, for sharing your expertise with us and all the good information. And you guys, you got her. The website is on the chat. And also, we'll hopefully you got the QR code. But if you didn't get all that, hit me up. I can get you to her.
Thank you.
So have a great rest of the night. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you.